Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Coffee with Legislators. First, I'd just like to thank our innovation partners. These are our annual sponsors that help us do the work that we do, and we couldn't do it without them. And we also have a series of media partners who help us share the great stories that come out of our region. So we're thankful for them as well. We have an upcoming event on December 8th, an in-person business on tour at Columbia Forest in Chatham. So you can register for that on our website, and we hope to see you there. And with that, I will hand it over to the chair of our legislative committee, Hunter Burns.
Thanks, Madison, and welcome everyone. I see Senator Stanley has joined us well. I'd like to introduce all of y'all, although you probably know them well, to our four local legislators. We have Delegate Danny Marshall, we have Senator Frank Ruff, Delegate Les Adams, and Senator Bill Stanley that are here with us this morning. And I was just chatting briefly with a couple of them before everybody else was allowed in. And this is an interesting time again in the Commonwealth as things are changing in General Assembly, as well as in the governor's office next year. So I know that they have plenty to talk to y'all about, and I'm sure everyone on the call has questions for them. This is just an opportunity. Normally we're sitting around the table, and hopefully next year we will. And it's a chance for them to connect with you and for you to hear from them. So without further ado, I'm going to open it up to Delegates Marshall, Adams, and Senators Ruff and Stanley. Danny, you're the first one that I have on my screen, so I'll just kind of hand it over to you and let y'all start how you will.
Sure, and thank you for doing this again. I think this is always helpful to get this information out to our constituents. And so we encourage you to, if you have any information that you think that we need to understand about bills that you will see shortly that have been entered for 2022, please get in touch. Just Google Virginia General Assembly, and there's a little drop-down tag on the right-hand side where you can look at bills by any one of the members of the General Assembly, or you can look at it by a different type of go to different committees, or either you can look at it by a topic. So look at those, and if you have information that you think we need to see, please emailing me is what I prefer. But if you need to call me, please do so. So we'll be going to Richmond in early January. Yes, this is an exciting time. We have a new governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general, and so the governor is busy working with his transition team, getting ready to govern in early January. So that is being worked on now, and so it's pretty exciting times. I'll yield to my other people on the call.
And Frank, Les, Bill, y'all jump in however you would like. We really don't want to put any parameters on the time this morning. So anybody that'd like to speak, go right ahead.
I'll go ahead and follow up. This is a breath of fresh air after the last couple of years. We have not focused on the things that have been positive for business in the last 2 years, particularly small business. And I think that we will see some changes, certainly within the administration, but having the House of Delegates controlled by more business-minded folks will be better. I think the Senate, not much has changed, but we still have a chance of picking up a couple of good types of legislation in the business community. I've already talked to a couple of Democrats who said that they think maybe they had stepped out too far on some of those issues, and we've got to get train back on the track, because we need to make the world and the nation know that Virginia is prepared to receive new companies, to expand existing companies, so that we can employ Virginians and we can get back into the concept of working and relating that to eating.
Les, do you want to take over?
Well, sure. And good morning, everyone. And thank you, Hunter, and to all the members of the chamber for this forum again. It's good to be with you. And gosh, like you say, it'd be nice to be in person again. Of course, we got that bad news the day after Thanksgiving about another variant coming, but let's hope that it's not as serious as some of the experiences we've had in the past. But it is exciting, as you mentioned, being in the legislature now, having followed one-party rule for the past few years, where the majority of the Senate, the House, and then the office of governor are all Democrats, and not just Democrats like we may have known them in the past, but a certain zeal and revolutionary spirit that sort of animated the body over the past couple of years. And I'm not certain of this, but I think this may have been the shortest period of majority rule for any one party, at least in recent times, before there was change. I mean, so it was a short period of time, but a lot happened in that short period of time that really energized people to come out to vote. And as you may have noticed, I mean, we had turnout that was really off the charts. And so you do see a change in direction for the Commonwealth. And I think you're going to see some of the big themes, education and parents' rights, public safety. We saw really our public safety measures and policies under attack for the past year and a half. And, I think that has halted now immediately. We're also looking at making life easier on families, financially. You've heard Governor-elect Youngkin talk about eliminating a grocery tax, for instance. So I think there'll be a focus on those type of things. And then with the pandemic, a move away from mandates to and shutdowns to dealing with things more collaboratively and thoughtfully, in my opinion. So that's sort of the broad overview as I see it in terms of where we are now and what's going to happen. And it is an exciting time to start preparing to go back to Richmond.
Thank you. Senator Stanley, are you ready?
I'm ready. Can you hear me?
We can.
It's hard to follow Les Adams. I'm going to give it a shot, but he's exactly right. I think we're stepping into a new day for Virginia. Been working with the transition team on certain things, and I can tell you that the excitement for this governor and this administration, and not just stopping the political jewelry store smash and grab that's been going on by the Democrats for the past 2 years. That's basically they're coming in, popping the top, and they took all the jewels until the alarms went off. Well, those alarms went off. And I know the Youngkin campaign is going to try to, Governor-elect Youngkin's transition team and his administration are going to do their very level best to right the ship in those areas that they can. I think, with Frank saying what is exactly true, we are 21-19 in the Senate. It will take at least one defection. And then, of course, we have the tie-breaking vote on everything except judges and those matters that deal with money and appropriation can be made by our Lieutenant Governor-elect Winsome Sears. But I can also tell you that even in the areas that I've been asked to help, what I see is an incredible positive viewpoint of this incoming administration for South Side and Southwest Virginia. They see a ton of opportunity there. And I think even hearkening back to what Les said, I think they also know what put them over the top. And finally, our electorate, our voters turned out in the number which offset Northern Virginia. And that is not lost on the Youngkin administration. And quite frankly, I think it will be demonstrated in part of their economic focus, which will be, I think, in large part in Southside and Southwest Virginia. I hear a lot of compliments from people on his team about what Danville has been and Pittsylvania County have been able to do economically in terms of revitalizing their economy. I've heard great compliments, and I hope they pass those along to you. And if not, I'm passing them along to you as we speak. But I see a lot of a good hope in what we can do. We can't, because we still have the Senate in Democrat control, do everything we need to do that is probably pro-business. But I would think this, in the same way that, again, Senator Ruff said that many Democrats thought they bit off more than they should have in their glee of being in leadership and in the majority. I think also, too, they're going to see that the political winds in Virginia have changed. And they have changed in a way that demonstrate that a lot of what they did during the time when they had both the governor's mansion, the House, and the Senate was not reflective of what average everyday Virginians, no matter where they lived or what their zip code was, wanted to have happen in their Commonwealth. And so I think you're going to see a lot of Democrats, especially those in the Senate that see in 2 years in the redistricting looming ahead of them, a need to jump on board of some of these great programs, including but not limited to the repeal of the grocery tax. So I think what you'll see is a lot more of them moving to our side than we were able to move to their side in their radical agenda. So I think it's going to be very pro-business 4 years. I think for the next 2 years, we're going to see some reset that's going to help small businesses. And I know the Youngkin transition team and Governor-elect Youngkin are excited to get to work, and especially get to work in our areas that need the most help economically.
Thank you. I think that's a great overview for everybody as we begin today, so that everybody understands what the landscape is in the Commonwealth over the next few months and years. And now I want to open it up to questions from the attendees. If I ask that if you have a question, that you unmute yourself so that everybody can hear you, and then remute yourself after you've asked your question.
Hunter, would you want us forward to maybe also give a little brief overview of the bills we have entered?
Yeah, Danny, I was gonna wait for some questions first, because as always, well, maybe we should go ahead and do that. That will probably prompt a few more questions. So
I have one quick.
Go ahead.
This is Steve Barrow from Hammer Hill Computers in Danville, Virginia. I have a quick question, and I'm hearing a lot of what the legislators are saying, and I applaud you guys on your election on the position and things of that sort. But I would like to know a little bit more of how it translates to opening up more funding for small businesses, especially like my business. We opened up after the pandemic, and a lot of the relief funds, the PPP and other things, were for companies who were started before the pandemic, were in business at least 2 to 3 years. Well, there are a lot of people that because they got laid off or furloughed or whatever during the pandemic, they started their own business. So how, what's the funding revenue or the funding stream for people who started during the pandemic or after the pandemic?
Okay, interesting question. Do any of y'all have any bills that are associated with that, or know of current funding that is flowing from Richmond?
I'll start it by saying I don't have any legislation at this point. I think that really it's going to have to come from the administration of how we deal with that. The reality is that we need more small businesses. We spend a lot of time and energy on bigger business. There are opportunities. Maybe at some point we can get together with this gentleman and figure out a way to tap what's already out there and available.
We have another question that is out there, and it's a question regarding the minimum wage increases that are set in place. The question is, should we expect new minimum wage requirements to hold, or is that something that could be reevaluated?
Hunter, I have a bill to freeze the minimum wage, and the next step in the minimum wage bill that was passed, I guess it was in 2020, is the next step is January 1 when it steps to $11. All right, so my bill, what it will do, would freeze the minimum wage at that point, and so it does not go up above that. Now, the reason I'm doing this is for a couple of reasons. When the bill first passed, I'm on the committee that heard the bill, and I went to the patron and I talked to her about the difference. Virginia is not the same. Pennsylvania County, Danville is certainly different than it is in Northern Virginia and in Tidewater, where the average house sale in Northern Virginia is $500,000. It's, a fifth of that here in town. So the minimum wage would really hurt people. So I went into Hardee's back a month or so ago. I go there too many times. And I saw a sign there that the starting pay was $12.50. Then I saw another sign at a Goodyear at down the community market that starting pay was at $22. So the reason I'm doing it at $11 is I'm not going to repeal what's already has already been put in place, but we'll freeze it at $11. The other reason is that I think that I've heard from small businesses in retail and also in fast food is that they would be really hesitant here in our part of the state to hire young people at $15. At $11, they'll hire them. And I think that the life skills that young people learn working at a fast food restaurant or retail or something of this nature, they learn how to deal with people, the customers that come in, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But they also understand that, when at 5 o'clock in the afternoon is that your reporting time means 5 o'clock. It doesn't mean, that's approximate time. So I think it teaches a lot of life skills. And my concern is if we raise the minimum wage too much, then and dictated by the government, we would exclude a lot of those people. Now, you a small business, if you want to pay more than $11, that's your prerogative to do so. And in this marketplace where we are now, the majority of skilled labor is going for more than $11. And so that is a bill that I have that I'm having drafted.
Thank you, Danny. It's a very popular topic, and I've heard a lot of questions myself about that, along with other changes that went into effect last year. I'm going to keep this topic open for Frank, Bill, and Les. Do y'all have anything y'all want to add to Danny's comments?
I think that I'd be glad to sign on to Danny's bill. I expect it to be a little more difficult to get it to the Senate. And I'm not sure where we're going. I think the inflation issue is, and the lack of being able to find people willing to work is going to drive the wage level faster and harder than the a state set minimum wage.
And Danny, I would just, also applaud your efforts to focus on this issue, knowing, what a concern it is in the business community. Of course, I mean, my perspective is we want higher wages. But we also, need the opportunity for businesses to survive, to be able to supply those jobs. And so, you know, mandates we know are not effective that way. Government controls on prices is not effective long term. And something I maybe wonder about in reference to the dynamics in the Senate, if there might be a compromise available that recognizes different regional economic climates. As Danny mentioned, it's a big difference in the cost of living, you know, here and the standard of living here, as opposed to some other parts in the state that could take a progressive increase in the minimum wage in ways that we wouldn't. So I'd be curious to hear what my colleagues, maybe Danny, if any of the other members, even on in the House side on the committee, have talked about that or willing to offer that to the Senate.
And I will just add to everyone's comments, if that's okay. The question really was focusing on small businesses too, that, you know, opened after the pandemic, did not get the benefit of PPP. They, you know, they may not have had the assistance that government can give them to get the boost that they need to be better and to be successful. You know, one of the things that we have seen is the Democrats in the past 2 years touted that they had returned to the #1 status in CNBC on the best place to do business. Of course, that's, if you look and you dig into the numbers, it's because they weighted and scaled certain things a different way to focus more on whether we had an inviting climate to all of the different things that were changing in the social strata, rather than how did we as a state act towards small businesses. And in fact, if you looked on the roster there on CNBC, you'll see when it comes to starting a new business in the Commonwealth of Virginia, we rank 49th out of 50 states. That's really, I think, the crux of the problem, that somehow we have gotten ourselves into a position where we think it's by unionization, we're making ourselves better for business. We're not. And in the same way, we're not helping small businesses open and stay open. I can tell you that the Youngkin administration is focusing on that. I'm focusing on that on the bills that we're writing up right now. How do we make sure that we're the #1 place for small businesses to open up? And what is it that, when you look at the list of what state is #1 for inviting small businesses to open up, what I saw and what I've seen and continue to see is that they have a less burdensome regulatory process for small businesses to start, less cumbersome oversight by the government. And those are generalities, but there's some very specific things that I think we can do and change the regulatory structure to help small business. And that's stuff that, you know, is what we would call low-hanging fruit. It's the easy stuff to grab because it can be changed within the administration itself. Not necessarily has to be changed by legislation, which rolls through 3 months. And by the time it actually becomes law July 1st of the next year, it's, you know, you've had 6-7 months of not having that benefit. So I think what we're going to see is a lot of going through the regulatory rule books that in the past 8 years, we've had a governor administration after governor administration that has put more regulations on small business, not small. They've touted large businesses coming in that maybe not have come in, or they've given away the store to them and ignored our small business. We cannot afford to ignore small business. That is the #1 driver of our economy, and Virginia continues to do so and will forevermore. And that includes, and is not limited to, our farmers as well.
Thank you all. We've gotten a couple of questions on another very popular topic in the past couple of months. It's regarding the OSHA emergency temporary standard regarding COVID and the requirements. Some folks refer to it as the Biden mandate on COVID. And the question is, will Virginia oppose it? And this obviously affects all employers with more than 100 employees, and the requirements that they mandate vaccinations or weekly testing for the workplace.
I'll jump in on that one, even though I just answered a question. I'll say I've got a bill in right now that's being drafted that does two things. One is that no first responder hospital worker, nurse, doctor can be fired for refusing to disclose their status of vaccination or refusing the vaccination. If it was good enough for them to work during the pandemic when there was no vaccination, I think their personal choices should be recognized. The other is that Virginia cannot force businesses such as these to follow the guidelines of the federal government. Now, there's an issue of primacy on that. When the federal government's law is primary over any state law that would advance that notion. I firmly believe, because there's currently litigation going on right now where some attorneys general of different states, Republican attorneys general, have involved themselves and engaged in that lawsuit. I would surmise that Jason Miyares, once he becomes our attorney general, will be probably joining that lawsuit as well. But I've looked at the pleadings and the injunctive orders handed down by the court. And I think that because, as the court says, that addresses grave constitutional concerns, that what you'll see is, even in that instance, I think you're going to see that those mandates for businesses of 100 or more are not going to stand for constitutional muster. They're not going to succeed. But I think Virginia needs to be aggressive and not only saying we join in that lawsuit, but also we're never going to have that be a part of the lexicon in doing business in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We suffered under Governor Northam's executive orders 52 and 53. We saw small businesses go away and die. And quite frankly, when we look back on it, that was too harsh. And quite frankly, it was too much of government meddling in people's private lives and their small businesses in order to prove a political agenda. We didn't flatten the curve. We still had our round of COVID, and we allowed businesses to suffer. We can never let that happen again in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Thank you. Delegates, Senator Ruff, do any of y'all have any comments about the COVID requirements?
I think Bill said it as clearly and as completely as possible. He's, I don't work in the legal world, but I certainly believe that the federal courts are going to say that the mandates are not legal as they've been written, or as the regulations have been written. The process requires for input from the public before any regulation can be enforced, and that has not happened. So, but I think Bill is exactly right. We need to fight it every way we can.
And Hunter, I would just say, add my voice to that. I think the Senator is exactly right. From Virginia's standpoint, we are going to see a change in direction, but of course, the big challenge facing folks right now comes from the federal government. And to Senator Stanley's point about the Attorney General's position, I heard him give an interview just recently, and he hasn't made a formal decision on that yet, but I know that he and his folks are seriously considering it, and I would likewise not be surprised to see Virginia join that existing legislation opposing at the federal level as well.
And I would agree with my colleagues, and I think that we should leave it up to the individual companies to make that decision and individual citizens of Virginia to make that decision.
And just as a quick update, in case anybody on the Zoom this morning is not aware, the mandate, the policy, the OSHA policy that was announced is currently stayed by federal appeals court. So it is not in the midst of implementation, although as I've advised all of my businesses, you should go ahead and get in place what your policy is and be prepared to comply with the policy if it should happen. But for the time being, it's on hold. And as the legislators pointed out, the courts have been pretty clear with their language that they see a lot of issues with the policy as it was published. So the next topic that we had for question involves the Equality Act. And if you will discuss what exactly the Equality Act is and what is the impact locally.
There were a lot of equality named legislation that went through the last couple of years. You want to define that a little closer as to what where we're at on the.
Well, I read it, and the Equality Act, when I first read it, I assumed that they were speaking about the changes to our employment laws involving discrimination, but I'm not positive of exactly what they mean by the Equality Act. So,
well, I'll grasp one of them, and that is equality in the environment. There has been an effort to say that Virginia in the past has not been fair to everyone, so anybody can weigh in on any potential change in the use of land. So it sets up a system of legalized extortion, where if a business says they want to come to a particular county, particular area, then that business has to negotiate with whoever may pop up and say, oh, once upon a time, there was something here, there was something there. It's within 20 miles of my house, so it might affect me. So what will you give me to make me go away? And I think that is going to be a disaster as we move forward. We're already seeing problems. It would just make us less attractive to do business in.
Hunter, following up on that, excuse me, Frank, you finished?
I was just going to say on the employment issue, I think we've been tried to be as fair and as equal as possible. Equal is not the same thing as equality. Equality talks about the outcome, whether it be in education or whether it be in jobs, the amount of effort that an individual puts into the issue. It should be the determining factor on whether you get a job, whether you're willing to get yourself trained and educated, not whether you meet all the qualifications of sex, age, whatever. Now I'm through, Danny.
So I'm on one of the transition teams, and the one that we're working on, talking to one of the department heads, is the problem is under one of these programs, if they wanted to go and repair a building, they just can't run to Lowe's or Home Depot or even one of the local building supplies here. They have to do a search to see who is qualified for that particular product. It could be plumbing, it could be electrical, it could be so on and so forth. And sometimes the legislation did not say that it has to be in the same city. So they might have to drive, to the next city to buy the part that they're looking for because of this legislation that we put forth. And so it's costing time and it's costing money to we as taxpayers. And so as we have a tough time, finding people right now, we're wasting time trying to go out and having to comply with this. Just think about if you had to do that in your own business. I don't think you would want to do this very long. It's not the way that we should go to make sure that people are not discriminating against any type of minority business or anything. But we also got to be practical in our follow through.
Thank you. We've got a question about the Tobacco Commission and what changes might happen. compared to how it operates now. And if you will give a quick summary of the changes that have occurred over the past couple of years in terms of the board and how it's been operating.
All right, I'll start. So the Tobacco Commission was originally started with Senator Charles Hawkins and Delegate Whit Clement back in the late 90s. And that money came from a settlement where the attorney generals of the different states sued the tobacco company. That was called a master settlement. The state of Virginia got that money and put into what is a fund called, as we call it, the Tobacco Commission. And the Tobacco Commission had a line drawn that basically was, if you go east of here, it's about where 95 crosses 58, and that is in all the way down to Dinwiddie County. And so, and then it goes all the way to the further west, all the way out to Lee County. And so it was the areas that were tobacco dependent. And so the original legislation said that the legislators who were on that mission had to reside and represent people in that. So on the House side, when the other party took control, they just threw out all that and added people from Petersburg, added one from Blacksburg, and got somebody from Roanoke. And none of those areas are in the tobacco region. So just so happens that this past election, three of the four that they nominated were defeated. So it looks like that I will go back on the Tobacco Commission, and I have already talked to the chairman of the Tobacco Commission, and I will resume my chairman of the committee that I was chair of 2 years ago. So I think that the Tobacco Commission has not been a political arm, but the Democrats in the House made it political. The Tobacco Commission has done so many things for this area, and if you see Charles Hawkins, if you see Whit Clement, thank them. I think Frank Ruff was probably part of that back last century also. So thank them for this because they have done so much to trying to reinvent our economy here. I'll get off my soapbox.
If I can add to that, just what Danny said, look, my concern has always been, especially I was honored to serve on the Tobacco Commission. The Democrats, as soon as they got the majority in the Senate, took me off of it. It doesn't look like I'll get to do what Danny's going to do, but I'm very happy to know that Danny and other Republicans or other legislators from the tobacco footprint will repopulate the commission. That was the problem, but that was also their intent. Their intent was to expand the tobacco footprint, to ultimately make it just an economic program, not specific to our area, but to open it up to other areas that were not a part of the historic tobacco footprint. My concern is that there are some Republicans that live in places like Hanover or in the Northern Neck, the Eastern Shore, that do believe that they have, since they had some tobacco fields or some kind of involvement with the tobacco history of the Commonwealth of Virginia, that they should be entitled to participate in the Tobacco Commission. So what we've got to gird ourselves against is making sure that I would expect to see legislation. If they still had the majority, I would expect to see legislation killing the Tobacco Commission. But what I would not be surprised to see is where other senators and House of Delegate members, maybe Democrats, but maybe Republicans, propose to try to expand the reach of the Tobacco Commission outside its historic tobacco footprint. I think that's a concern we need to watch. I say that having spoken with members of my own party and members of my own caucus who might like to see that happen. We've got to make sure that we hold firm. And now that we're getting back to having people that are from this area serve on the Tobacco Commission from the House of Delegates, I think we need to make sure that we protect what we have and what's been so successful in revitalizing the economies of Pittsylvania County and of Danville. of Henry County and the surrounding tobacco region. So we need to be vigilant. As Thomas Jefferson said, vigilance is the price of liberty. And I believe that vigilance is the eternal price of the Tobacco Commission as well.
To follow up on those eloquent words, there are those who believe that the Tobacco Commission should not exist. There are those who believe that it ought to be expanded to other poorer counties. But the reality is that all of the counties that in the tobacco footprint are economically stressed. So if you take the existing money and spread it out farther, you may help a few counties, but you harm all those in Southwest and South Side. It probably would be wiser if you want to help a poorer county outside the tobacco footprint is to put more money into those areas. Maybe the Upper Peninsula, the Northern Neck area, and designate other money to go there. Moving money from one pocket to the other pocket doesn't change a whole lot. To say that we're going to take the money away from the Tobacco Commission or from the tobacco region and then have to assign other forms of financial opportunities to us makes very little sense to me.
All right, thank you. We have kind of a follow-up to the previous discussion on the COVID regulations. And it is, do you expect that there, or do you know of any bills, or do you expect anything that is going to put into effect any requirements of employers as it relates to COVID in terms of masking, vaccination, testing, anything along those lines in the Commonwealth of Virginia?
Well, they can put the bills in, but they're not going to work. I don't think with the Republican majority in the House that any senator from the Republican side would put in such a bill. But the Democrat side, they might put it in on the Senate side, and it might even get out of the Senate, but it will not last in the House. So I don't see those bills. I mean, people can file bills, and they do file bills about some of the strangest things and some things that they know won't work, and they've done it before and they'll do it again. But I just don't see, people may file that bill, but I just don't see that ever getting to the governor's desk. And I think even if one squeaked by and got to the governor's desk, I don't think the governor would support it.
Okay. Those are all the questions that I see that we have received in the chat. If there are any additional questions, please send them in. Here's one. There's a question about the foster care system. It's from somebody that is a caseworker and licensed foster parent, and she sees a lot of need for change in that area. Do any of you have any bills planned as it relates to the foster care system, or are you aware of anything that is out there?
Well, Hunter, that's certainly an issue across the Commonwealth. There's a lot of strain on our foster care systems, as we've seen, a lot of challenges with the family structure over the past couple of decades. And this was something that was addressed recently by a study that showed that Virginia had a lot of changes to make. And so there has been efforts in the past few years to try to allow for more flexibility in terms of who could qualify for those types of positions. But I would just say to the questioner, if they have a specific targeted issue to address, I'd certainly be willing to entertain that and look for ways to try to solve the problem. But it is an ongoing problem because you have such a heavy demand in that field and children who need those services, and it's just difficult to address it right now. But yeah, we're constantly looking for ways to make that better.
That's great. Well, to anyone that is out there, of course, feel free to directly contact any of these legislators if you have an issue that you would like to see addressed, and they and their aides can work with you and respond to you if there's something that they already have planned, or perhaps finding some support that is already out there for the issue.
This is Steve again. I have a quick follow-up to my original question, and also to something that a couple of the legislators spoke on. One of the things that I wanted to find out was when they were talking about things like for example, and I assume they were talking about the SWAM certification and different ones where funds are allocated to small businesses so that they would have to purchase from a small company, and you can't go to a Home Depot or a Lowe's to buy whatever the product is. And again, as a small business owner, I feel almost like I'm in a vice, almost like I'm a pimple being squeezed, because the money is not coming in to help us survive on one side. On the other side, people are talking about wanting to raise the minimum wage. Now, again, like the legislator said, yes, if you live in Alexandria, $15 is nothing. But if you live in Danville, $15 is a lot. So I feel like it should be more of a regional discussion than maybe a statewide or even a federal discussion. But then on the other side of it, it seems like a lot of the preparation on when it comes to our legislators is more on big business, and the preparation isn't on small business, because the problem with the small business, the question with the small business, I mean, we got like maybe a 30-second answer of we'll look into it, but we spoke almost half an hour on the issues about the big businesses. So the only way that those issues are really going to affect the small business owner is if our business fail and we have to go to work for that big business. That's the only way that mask mandate on the 100 employees or more becomes relevant to the small business, is if we fail and we go to work for that big business. Now, with that being said, it's almost like, being on a sinking ship, and instead of dipping the water out of the boat, you're worrying about the shark in the water. If we dip the water out of the boat, we'll never get to the shark in the water. But that's my 2 cents. I'm not saying I represent every small business, and I'm not saying I represent every small business on this call, but I just feel like during the election, I've been hearing a lot about, we're for the small business. Small business is what runs America. And I've been hearing that as a soundbite on every channel. And it's not just with with one party or another. It's with both parties. I've been hearing that for years, that small business runs America. But when everyone gets in, they cater to big business, and the small businesses fend him for himself.
All right, thank you.
I would say that he made a valid point there, but the ruling factor should be common sense and what's right for the taxpayers. Back 20 years ago, there was a proposal that was going to be tested out of the South Hill VDOT residency of contracting with Napa to buy at a certain markup for their needs. Napa is a franchise operation. It's the Napa store in Clarksville carried everything in the world. The Napa store in South Hill, where the residency was much more limited, because the regulation, the test was for the Napa to control it to buy from Napa whenever possible. They would go to the Napa store in South Hill. Napa store in South Hill would go to Clarksville, pick up the item, or get it delivered back to South Hill. Whereas the item might have been needed in Clarksville at that office there. So a $5 item got traveled all over the place. And that made very little sense. If they'd used common sense rather than just saying, trying to write regulations, it would have worked a lot better.
The other issue is if you look at what the definition of a small business is it's pretty daggone large. It's I think the federal number is, last I saw, is about 500 employees, which is economic development wise, if we got a company into Danville, that's 500 employees is another a great win. So if you're down less, if your small business is 5 employees or 10 employees, you have a whole lot different issues than if you are at 500 employees. And so part of the problem is the definition of small business. I think is probably the frustration that a lot of people see.
Right, and in that case, then you'll be considered a micro business if that's the amount of employees. But the logistical issues that we saw 20 years ago are not the same issues that we see today, because like, for example, back then we had it took so much longer to get an item to and from a location, whereas now, like, for example, when we get if I were to get an order through the EVA system, by the time they put it into the EVA system, it goes over to the Ariba system. That's like a day, which is really quick, really fast. And I fulfill that order, and I can have that order drop shipped to that department in Alexandria or Fairfax or wherever in about 3 to 4 days. So from the time they place their order to the time they receive it, it's still less than a week. So, and even at that, we're only doing a small markup, where that markup is maybe 15% to 20% at the most. So for a small business, it works out great that we have that opportunity to do business with the Commonwealth. Where the problem comes in is if we were to take that away, then we're going to end up with more issues like the VITA system, where the VITA system only allows 5 major, and when I say major, I mean major companies to control everything. And then it kind of trickles down to whoever they choose to do business with. So
Steve.
Yes, sir.
Steve, I'm going to interrupt you because we've got a bunch of other questions that have come in, and I don't want to monopolize all their. Oh, no, you're fine. But we're going to move on to a question from Lauren Athena. With the rebranding of CIT to the Virginia Innovation Partnership Commission, please discuss the potential impact on our region. Anyone?
Well, I'll just jump in here. I see it. It's another opportunity, and Lauren could probably speak to it as well as anybody with the work that she's done and how our region can take advantage of the sort of new way of looking to connect investment opportunities and startups or promote innovation here. I think it could be very positive for our region, and I know she's done some great work for our region in the past, and hopefully this will be another tool for our folks to use.
Thank you. We've got another question from Bert Eads. Economic development has been very successful in the Southside region with bringing employers like Morgan Olson and Caesars Casino. How do you think we can grow the workforce to support the existing and new businesses? That's been a topic that I've heard a lot over the past few years. Bert and I have even discussed it. because it's great to have the jobs, but available. But it's difficult when we don't have a developed workforce to fill those roles.
So I don't think it's just us. I think if you talk to anyone in any location around the Commonwealth, around the U.S., they have the same problem. There's more jobs out there now than there's people to fill them, and so this is a real quandary we're in. Just like Morgan Olson when they came to town, and the last one, Tyson's, that was, I guess, was the last company that announced. I asked him about that. Said, so the other locations you looked at was employees an issue. And they said it's an issue everywhere. So I guess it's the world we live in. And so I think that we have to make our quality of life issues here that people will want to live here. I get a magazine article once a year, and they survey the CEOs, and they ask, and these are the people who are responsible for either business expanding or either locating. And quality of life is in the top 5. Is one of the considerations that they look at. And so a lot of things have happened here. Things that some people question, like the river walk and those type of things, that those quality of life, so people have something to do once they leave here. So, we have tried to turn this economy around and turn the community around. When NAFTA hit, as Ross Perot said, you're going to hear this giant sucking sound. Well, you could hear it on Main Street in Danville, for about a decade, all the way over to where Frank is. I mean, it hit rural Virginia. So we are, if you look at the last census, we're stable here as far as our population, but we got a long ways to go yet. So, Bert, I don't think I'd answered your question, but anyway, I thought I'd give it a shot.
Well, I'm surprised that Danny didn't mention the workforce training effort that both of us have been focused on for a number of years. And probably the part of the reason that the Danville, Pennsylvania County has been as successful as they have been in the last few years is the training that they've started in the high schools and moved through the community college system, so that you have people who understand what work is all about and how to deal with the tools necessary to accomplish what needs to be done. So I think the more emphasis we can put on that type program, it will benefit all of us. They not only start making money to take care of their family earlier and faster, but they become a part of the community that gives back.
Well, as Senator's clock has told us, it is now 9 o'clock or a few seconds beforehand. I want to thank the legislators and for everybody else that showed up this morning. I hope it was educational to you, and we thank you on behalf of the chamber for participating. And again, Senators Ruff and Stanley and Delegates Marshall and Adams, we truly appreciate you taking the time this morning and making yourselves available to everybody. And we wish you a happy end of November and beginning of December. Thank you.
Thank you.